Hi Ivan, how are you this morning?
Very nice, lovely sunny day, can't complain.
Yes. I suppose SNP are probably thinking it's a sunny day with the latest Ashcroft polls as well.
Quite remarkable. When you think that they've reached the top, then there's another peak beyond that. And the latest Ashcroft polls show the SNP potentially winning just about every seat in Scotland.
That can't be bad for them. You must be extremely happy. Is it going to be like the moment in '97 when the last Tory was out of Scotland?
Well, it could be. I mean, these things have happened before. People say it's such a dramatic event that it couldn't happen, but these things have happened in the past. In other places, I mean, in Ireland back in the 19th, early 20th century, the Nationalist Party had pretty much every single seat in the country for decades. So these kind of events can happen.
But I mean, how accurate do you think the polls actually are? Is there a danger of triumphalism before the real result?
Yeah, I think that the polls in general, I mean, the gap is so big that the polls could be out by a small amount, but they're not going to be out by that much. But that's not really the issue. The issue is whether there's a late swing and whether things happen over the next 3 weeks or so that cause people to change their minds, or people that are currently wavering or largely undecided to swing to Labour. That is certainly possible, and that's happened in previous elections, so there really is no room for complacency, as everybody rightly says.
What do you think could engender a swing at the last minute?
I think that's one of the known unknowns. It's very difficult to judge that. If we knew the answer to that in advance, then it wouldn't be a problem. If you look back at some of the things in previous elections that have caused things to happen, I mean, Neil Kinnock in his Sheffield speech in '92, which was over triumphalism, or if you look back to something as stupid as Gordon Brown's offhand comments about the bigoted woman. In the last election, the slightest thing that's out of sync with the campaign can cause problems. So you don't really know once they get into the last stages of a campaign. Anything can happen that can swing public opinion one way or the other. Although at the moment, the momentum with all the carry-on with Murphy as branch manager during the week getting undermined by his own side, all seems to be very much with the SNP.
Did you see Alex Thompson trying to give away the Labour manifesto in Glasgow?
I did not. I must have missed that. What happened? Would nobody take one?
Actually, one woman told him to shove it up his arse live on Channel 4 News.
Oh dear. So they can say it in Channel 4, we can say it on the podcast. Okay.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, I can't go Labour after the referendum and so on. So I mean, it's just vox pops. You never really get a real idea from those. But for someone like yourself who's involved with the party, you obviously want to be encouraging people, feet on the street and door to door.
Yeah, absolutely. What I've seen, my involvement, there are a lot of people getting involved. The membership is obviously vast. I mean, well over 100,000 now and growing all the time. I mean, in our branch, we see notification of new members coming through several a day. It's quite remarkable. And a lot of those folk are out doing stuff. People that have joined the party or are even thinking about it but haven't been out doing something. It's very easy just to go down to your local SNP shop, and they're in every constituency now, and just pick up a bunch of leaflets and go do something. It's very easy, and it's every little bit helps.
But at this point, we can't be sure that the polls are going to play out exactly as described, but if even within 5% of what's being predicted happens, we are going to see some very, very big hitters in various parties lose their seats.
Yeah, and I think it's in Scotland there's one scenario we're talking about, and we can go on and talk about the situation in the rest of the UK, which frankly is much, much, much more interesting from a poll watcher point of view. Because in Scotland, you're right, the only discussion, I think, barring some dramatic events happening, is will Labour lose a lot of seats or will they lose pretty much all of the seats? The kind of core seats like Jim Murphy's seat, Douglas Alexander's seat, Willie Bain's seat, the ones that we thought the SNP would never gain, even those look to be under significant threat, and the polls are showing the SNP winning those. So that's really the level, I think, of the decision making in Scotland, whether the SNP wins, I say, 35, 45 or 55 seats. Now, that makes a difference in terms of individual seats, but in terms of the direction of the UK government, it probably doesn't make a lot of difference because it's all part of the anti-Tory bloc anyway. It would be nice to clear Labour out. But as I say, the fascinating part of this election is the overall UK picture.
And down there, it seems like there's a bit of swing going on, but it's a swing within a certain bracket. It's going 2% one way and 2% the other way between Tories and Labour, but there doesn't seem to be any massive deviation.
Yeah, but that's where it's fascinating, because while in Scotland 2% either way makes pretty much very little difference, it'll move a small number of seats but not make a huge difference. Down south, or across the UK as a whole, a 2% difference makes a huge difference to the composition of the government. And that's the point, because if a poll's up or down 2% day by day, you've got margin of error, you've got different polling companies with different procedures, so they're all going to be slightly different, and you could get late swings by a couple of points on the last couple of days. It's quite normal. So, as I say, depending on where it is now, it absolutely is on a knife edge, and nobody can really predict it. Because all the polls are showing pretty much neck and neck. Just talking through where we're at, if we're neck and neck, absolutely, both parties are the same. Depending on how many seats go Labour SNP, you're in a position where Labour would be the biggest party, because they've got an inbuilt advantage down south in terms of number of votes you need to win a seat. So Labour always wins more seats when the vote numbers are the same, which would make them the largest party, and they would be able to lock the Tories out with SNP support. If Labour does a wee bit better than they are just now, it's possible they get to the point where if Labour goes a couple of points ahead of the Tories, they're in the place where they could probably even do a deal with the Liberals and have a government without SNP support, which would be interesting. Labour plus Liberals could get a majority if Labour gets a couple of points ahead. If Labour get about 4 points ahead, it's another 2% swing towards Labour. Labour could get very close to having an overall majority on their own. If you go in the other direction, if the Tories go a couple of points ahead, then the two big parties are neck and neck on seats. In that scenario, you've got a strange scenario where where Tories have got potentially more votes and more seats across the UK, but Labour plus the SNP lock them out, which is interesting. And if you got another couple of points and Tories can get 4 points in the lead, then the Tories, together with the Liberals and the potentially support from the DUP, they've got a majority, and David Cameron's in power. So there is a full range of very interesting possibilities, all within a couple of points of each other. And it'll be fascinating to watch how that plays out. And it could come right down to the last bunch of seats that are counted on the morning of the 8th through the day of the 8th of May. And then, of course, you're into a scenario where even if you do get a government, once you've had half a dozen by-elections, it could all change again because the majority swings in the other direction. So from a poll watcher's point of view and an election watching point of view, the numbers are fascinating.
I think it makes it 10 times more interesting than any other election where there's a sort of clear winner. This seems to liven the whole thing up quite a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember 2001 and 2005. Frankly, I can't remember 2001 and 2005 because nothing happened from start to finish. It was fairly uneventful and predictable. And also the same was true in 83, largely in 87 as well. I'm showing my age here, but this election is by far the most interesting. And then the politics after the fact, once the dust is settled and we see what the numbers are, the manoeuvring that's going to go on is going to be very interesting as well.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you very much. Great to talk to you. Talk to you again soon.